So how did we get here? How did we get to the final 6 teams heading into the postseason in 2022? Well, it really happened between San Diego Wave FC and North Carolina Courage. In our preview, Lisa, we definitely mentioned this as the match, as our game that was the biggest game to watch. And I think that ended up being true throughout the duration of this weekend. It was the key to other scenarios throughout the remainder of the weekend. And we said, like, listen, whatever's going to happen between San Diego and North Carolina is going to, dictate and determine some things throughout the remainder of the weekend. It was going to be the game that made sure whether or not Sunday's match actually mattered. Yep. And didn't disappoint. A 0-0 draw.
Sandra, you called it. You called the chaos. You called a draw between this one. You wanted the chaos. You wanted Sunday's game to matter, or you wanted there to be a little bit more excitement throughout the weekend. I loved it because I liked the chaos, but I picked North Carolina. I'm still a little sad that Courage didn't get a goal in this match. They didn't get the win based on
about it
and how it came out. I'm bummed. I am truly bummed for North Carolina. I don't have a lot of pull in games throughout the year. Honestly, I've watched 132 games. I've been on the call for how many of them? I am a neutral through and through and through. And watching this San Diego Courage game, my heart was with North Carolina watching.
You were I think I'm a little bummed out.
And then even watching Angel City, Chicago, I was like, come on, Angel City, get the win. And people around me were like, why do you care if Angel City wins? I was like, I don't care about Angel City. I want North Carolina to win. And so,
I'm sure you weren't the only one. I think that was part of the fun of going into this weekend, especially if you are a neutral, or if you're someone who has gotten introduced to NWSL over honestly the course of the last couple seasons. And I know with games being on Paramount Plus and some games being on Twitch available, for international viewers, with the pandemic and everything, it's sort of brought in a new wave of audiences. And so for folks who are finding themselves kind of new-ish and following NWSL, I would imagine that a weekend like this was pretty thrilling. And maybe you did find yourself towards the end on the final match weekend being I don't know, I think I really want this in this A, B, or C to happen. But you know what? I liked this game. I think the scoreline, if you're just sort of looking at that, I think it just sort of doesn't tell the whole tale of the tape. I thought there were some really good moments in this game for either side to sort of go ahead and break through and perhaps upset the other, and despite San Diego and the Courage kind of ending out the match with a low number of attempts on target. I think it was 2 or 3 for each side. I thought it was we saw two teams both trying to get out there and get a result, but for different purposes. I think you sort of saw San Diego Wave FC side, with Casey Stoney, the coaching staff, obviously presenting some game plans for the players and saying hey, you're going to want to get out there and go and perform. And you want to go into the playoffs on a good game. You want to have that momentum. And then for the Courage, you kind of want to take fate into your hands and ensure that you are going to go ahead and have your place in the playoffs. And oh my gosh, I mean, this was really, I think if I had to look at each team and maybe point out an MVP of the game, I'm going to for defenders. I think Carson Pickett had an outstanding game for North Carolina. And I thought Naomi Girma was absolutely prophetic in this game for San Diego. I just thought they had outstanding individual performances for their team. I mean, Pickett at points, having a few attempts, in the final third as well, both in all phases of the game, both in the first half and in the second half as well. And you just saw, even with those limited attempts on target, there was at one point Doniak had a goal through, but it was called offside with Jody Taylor's positioning. And so, you just wondered at one point if there really was ever going to be a goal, but it just didn't come through. But I thought it was an exciting game. It absolutely had some playoff energy for me.
It did. And even heading into it, you just touched on Naomi Girma and how fantastic she did. When we look back to week 1 through 5 through 7 through 8, we talked so much about Kaylin Sheridan on the San Diego side because she was keeping them in game. She was making incredible saves all over the pitch. She was the 11th player on the field, joining into possession and into the attack for San Diego, getting an assist on an Alex Morgan goal. And as the season progressed, we saw so much growth from rookie Naomi Girma that towards the end of this season, the last several weeks, all we've been talking about is Girma and how defensively sound she has been. And she got better throughout this year. She grew into her role with the San Diego Wave team as their center back. She grew with confidence in what she was able to do on the pitch. And Casey Stoney awarded her for that in this final regular season match because Girma wore the armband. She was the captain for this match. And as a rookie, that is massive. Rookie of the year candidate and top of the list for me heading into this postseason. With Girma as the captain, and you look at San Diego and the news that came out right before this match about player availability, it seemed as though San Diego was going to be without some big players, heavy hitters in Abby Dahlkemper, Katie Johnson, Taylor Korniak, Alex Morgan, players that have been namestays for this San Diego side. Amira Ali was questionable heading into it. So that put almost more pressure on this match and more pressure on Girma to not allow any goals to happen because it was going to be a very, very slim margin. As soon as this game started, I could tell it was going to be a 1-goal game or a draw as it came out because of how tight it was. This for North Carolina Courage, they, including the Challenge Cup, the Courage played 30 games throughout this season, and they had only been shut out 3 times, both times against San Diego Wave. So I think that is such a fun stat with how many goals North Carolina scored, with how prolific their front line was with Caroline, Dabinia, Ordonez, shut out 3 times and twice against the Wave. So this result meant that San Diego Wave was going to host a game based on a few other results by Houston Dash. But at the end of this, it was going to be San Diego hosting a playoff game. So not only is an expansion side making the playoffs in their first year, but they're also hosting at the end of it, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think it's something to be celebrated, right? This is, an expansion side, one of the first California expansion side to come into existence and punch their ticket into the playoffs, and not only do that, but do it in a fashion in which they were largely in the upper half of the table for the entirety of their inaugural season. I don't believe San Diego Wave ever fell lower at any point in the regular season up until this, final stage of third place, and that is absolutely impressive for a first year team. To sort of, go ahead and do that. And I mean, enough can't be said about the performance of somebody like Girma, slotting in and being relied upon in that aspect. It's not just rookie for me. I think you can make Naomi Girma has a case for rookie of the year, defender of the year, and MVP. I think at this point, it's just been it's been thrilling to watch sort of her development over the course of the regular season. And I'm excited to see what it looks like in a playoff scenario. We will see moving forward. But what the result of this game opened up the window of possibility for some other things down the stretch with the 0-0 draw. That meant that Houston had an opportunity to go ahead and get a home playoff game of their own, and along with clinching a playoff spot. And it meant that Chicago Red Stars had a win and in scenario. And mathematically speaking, mathematically speaking, it also meant that Angel City, by mathematical miracles, could also shock the entire globe quite quickly and get a back doorway, back window into the playoffs. So it made things interesting. It made people say, you know what, you're going to have to tune in not just on Friday, but all weekend and on Sunday as well. And Sunday, that was the headliner. There were no other games on Sunday. It was Chicago Red Stars hosting Angel City FC. And Chicago Red Stars are back again. Their 7th consecutive NWSL playoff appearance. They do it with a 2-0 win over Angel City. Lisa, I didn't anticipate that this was going to happen. If memory serves me correct, I believe I had this one as a draw.
You did. You had a draw. I had Chicago winning this one.
That's it. You like, I had Chicago winning this one, and then your feelings got in the way. You said, I kind of want North Carolina to win.
I know. I love the run that North Carolina went on towards the end of this season. I mean, overall, when you look at a team that from the first game until the last game, North Carolina was not the best throughout this year. The fact that they were even in playoff contention is shocking. If you asked me that 5 weeks ago, I'd be like, no way, they can't turn this around. But a team that wins the Challenge Cup to then make the playoffs, I don't know. I had moments of delusion this weekend, and when I was thinking, like, wouldn't it be crazy if North Carolina won the Challenge Cup, then won the NWSL championship? And that's when Lisa has not had enough sleep in the final days of this regular season. But Chicago, Angel City, this match really coming down to it, and a lot of eyes turned to it because everything laid on this line, right? So if Angel City was able to win, that would mean that North Carolina was in the playoffs. All Chicago needed to do, their fate was in their own hands, is win out this game, and they did just that with 2-0 over Angel City. Mallory Pugh getting the opening goal in the very, very final minutes of stoppage time of the first half. It's the latest first half goal that's been scored in the NWSL. She does it in the 4th minute of stoppage time throughout that first half. And I almost think if Angel City checked out towards the end of that first half, just saying like, okay, let's just make it to half 0-0 at this point. We've got this. And it's Sarah Lubert who just cuts in through the middle of Angel City's back line, down centrally of their spine. She cuts inside and Pugh's just wide open. There's actually like a few other Chicago players open that could have taken this shot, but Pugh ends up getting on the end of it and she notches another goal, final one in her regular season career. And then in the second half, Angel City had an opportunity. There was a penalty kick called in the box. Savannah McCaskill steps up to take it. This was going to be her 5th attempt at a penalty kick all year. She's only made 2 of them, and it goes off the post. And in that moment, I was like, that was it. That was Angel City's chance to tie it up 1-1. And for everyone that's dissing on Alex Morgan for winning the Golden Boot, despite all of her penalty kicks and saying, hey, penalty kicks shouldn't matter.
Penalty kicks matter.
I've been there and I've thought that before, but when you look at this Angel City game, if Savannah McCaskill scored that penalty kick, everything would have changed in this match. Momentum would have shifted. It would have been a tied game throughout the second half. It would have changed everything. So penalty kicks matter. Alex Morgan winning the Golden Boot, despite having how many penalty kicks she scored this year, it doesn't matter. Penalty kicks matter. 5. Thank you, Sandra. I told you, no sleep over here.
It's all good. No, I'm with you. I went with a draw for a reason. In this one, no, we knew going into the match, even during the preview, we usually do our previews before there's any availability lists that are dropped, and we knew going into this game that Chicago was going to be down not just 1 but 2 starters. Bianca St. George's was red carded, a straight red card out of their previous match against Portland. A double yellow accumulation red for Zoe Morrison. This was 2 of their players who were going to be unavailable in this final match day. And while Mallory Pugh was available, she did pull up on a very tough shot that she took in Portland going into this match. So I think there were question marks around her availability or her form going into this match. And quite frankly, you have Red Stars players who have been coming on and off of this injury report throughout the duration of the season, but in particular during this second half of their season. So there were a ton of question marks about the availability of Red Stars players in this game and their overall fitness as well, and how would they be able to go within this game. So we saw a ton of players out there with a lot of tape around those lower extremities. Rachel Hill, Sarah Lubert, Amanda Kowalski, who ended up having to slot in light of losing Zoe Morris and Bianca St. George's. So I think there were a lot of things, quite frankly, going against the Chicago Red Stars team into this match, and quite frankly that would also include pressure. A different type of pressure that I don't know this team has necessarily been challenged with or faced throughout their prior 7 playoff appearances. I don't think this franchise or these players in particular are unfamiliar with being in a scenario in which a season comes down to the final 4 to 2 weeks, right? That's something they're not unfamiliar with, but something that they were unfamiliar with was literally being on the outside, looking into the upper half of the table. And I was a little bit curious with the response of this team and how that was going to look in a game like this, where it really meant everything. If they didn't win, they were eliminated effectively. And it was very cool to sort of listen to players like Alyssa Nair and Vanessa DiBernardo and get a chance to chat with them in the post game and talking about all that. And Vanessa DiBernardo saying like, yeah, it was a little bit of a different, energy to prepare for a game like this, because there are also a ton of young players who are on the team as well. And it was a little bit of a new experience in preparing for this type of scenario altogether. So to sort of see them go out there and do that, I thought was very exciting. I think it made for, great dramatics, I think, for the final game of the season in terms of how things shake out for the playoffs. But, you have to talk a little bit about maybe how those goals came. I mean, we had a player advantage for the Red Stars going into the half. You saw a very scary collision, occur between Jasmine Spencer and her own teammate Megan Reed and Chicago Red Stars Vanessa DiBernardo, and had to come not only off the pitch to get treatment, but ultimately was subbed out. So you had an 11v10 kind of situation take place with this opening goal, and Sarah Lubert just stretching that back line and having tons of two different passing lanes, quite frankly, for attackers in the box. And of course, you go to your team MVP at that point, Mal Pugh, who ended up putting the ball away in the back of the net, which I think if you're a Red Stars fan, you are excited about.
Yes.
Because in this game, not necessarily the same type of touches that we were seeing from Mallory Pugh in this game that we maybe seen in other games. So to sort of have, sort of break that deadlock going into halftime, I thought was very important. And I think you hit it right on the head, Lisa, when you said that not converting that penalty kick allowed the Red Stars to continue to sort of keep their game plan intact. I think if you disrupt a Red Stars team that's kind of going into a game like that, limping a little bit, scoring a goal or scoring an equalizer is going to disrupt things and maybe force them to make adjustments or force some type of disruption to their game plan. And I think if you disrupt Chicago's game plan, I think that's sort of where they might find themselves kind of faltering a little bit. But that wasn't the case in this one. Unfortunately, Angel City unable to play spoiler in this game, and Chicago Red Stars clinch that final 6 playoff spot. Exciting times in the buildup for the playoff scenarios.